At a family dinner, my daughter-in-law threw a wine glass straight at my head because I wouldn't let her parents take over my house. "Mom, you're being ridiculous," my son shouted. "You have 3 empty bedrooms," he screamed. I just smiled, grabbed my purse and walked out. Blood was running down my face, but I didn't panic. I sent one text. It worked perfectly. "Mom, you're being ridiculous." My son Tyler was yelling now, his face red, veins visible in his neck. "You have 3 empty bedrooms." 3. I stood in my living room holding my ground, watching my only child transform into someone I barely recognized. Across from me, his wife Megan was on her feet too, her face flushed with wine or rage or both. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these stories of strength and survival. If you believe in protecting yourself from family manipulation, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps reach others who need to hear this. Now let's see how this unfolds. "This is unbelievable," she said, her voice climbing higher. "You're going to let my parents be homeless? When you have all this space just sitting here empty?" "They're not homeless," I said calmly. "And this is my house." My answer is no. It was Thanksgiving Day. I'd spent 2 days cooking Tyler's childhood favorites, setting the table with Michael's mother's good china, trying to create one more family holiday in the house where my husband died 4 years ago. My twin granddaughters, Sophia and Olivia, were on the couch pretending to watch TV, but I could see their little bodies tensing up, sensing the danger in the room even if they couldn't understand it yet. "You know what your problem is, Linda?" Megan's hand was shaking as she picked up her wine glass. "You're selfish. Utterly selfish. Michael's been gone 4 years and you're still playing the grieving widow in your big empty house, acting like you're too good to help family." Something inside me went very still. "I think you need to leave now." "You're a cruel old woman," Megan said, and then she threw the wine glass directly at my head. I felt the impact before the pain registered. Heavy crystal connecting with my left temple with a sickening crack. Warm liquid streaming down my face. The room tilting slightly. Sophia started crying. Tyler shouted Megan's name but didn't move toward me. I touched my temple. My fingers came away bright red with blood. And I smiled. Because hidden cameras in my living room had just recorded everything. Because my attorney Catherine had prepared me for exactly this moment. Because this wasn't a disaster. This was the traps springing shut on the people who'd been trying to steal my house for months. But to understand how I got here, standing in my own home with blood running down my face, about to press assault charges against my daughter-in-law, you need to know what happened 2 months before when my bank called about a very suspicious transaction. It was a Tuesday morning in late September. I was still in my bathrobe, drinking coffee from the mug Michael bought me 20 years ago. The one that says, "World's Best Wife," in faded letters. The phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, official looking, the kind that usually means bad news. "Mrs. Harper? This is the Fraud Detection Department at First National Bank. We've flagged some unusual activity on your savings account." My coffee went cold in my hand. Unusual activity. Those words carry weight when you're 61 years old, living alone, managing the life savings you and your deceased husband spent 30 years building together. The woman on the phone was professional, reading from what was probably a script. Someone had attempted to transfer $15,000 from my savings account at 11:47 p.m. the previous night. The transaction failed because their fraud detection system caught it, but whoever tried had gotten far enough into my account to be deeply concerning. "They correctly answered 3 security questions," she explained. "Your husband's mother's maiden name. The street you lived on during college. Your first dog's name." I felt something shift in my chest, something cold and sharp. "Can you tell me where the attempt came from?" There was typing on her end. A pause that lasted 3 seconds too long. "The IP address traces to Cary, North Carolina. Does that mean anything to you?" "Cary. Where my son Tyler lives. Where he and Megan have been raising Sophia and Olivia in a townhouse they constantly describe as suffocating and way too small for a family of 4. I thanked the woman, confirmed I hadn't authorized any transfer, and asked her to email me all the details. Then I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours straight, staring at that fraud alert, watching morning sunlight creep across the hardwood floors Michael and I had refinished ourselves back in 1998. "My name is Linda Harper. I'm 61 years old and I've been learning how to live alone for 4 years now, Ever since Michael collapsed in our front yard while mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning in June. One moment he was out there in his old Duke t-shirt pushing the mower in those neat diagonal lines he always insisted on, and the next moment he was on the ground clutching his chest. I ran outside barefoot. I held him while we waited for the ambulance. He died in my arms before the paramedics arrived, looking up at me with this expression of complete surprise, like he couldn't believe his story was ending this way. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Our 4-bedroom colonial in Raleigh, the house we bought in 1995 for $185,000, stretching our budget until we were terrified, suddenly became enormous and hollow. Every room echoed with emptiness. Every creak of the floorboards reminded me I was alone. The neighborhood changed around me while I stayed frozen in grief. What used to be modest middle-class families became an enclave of tech money and research Triangle Park executives. Our neighbors now drive Range Rovers and Teslas. They renovate their kitchens for amounts that make my stomach turn. Property values exploded. Our house is now worth $1.8 million according to the last appraisal, a number that seems surreal and vaguely obscene. People ask why I don't sell, why I don't downsize into something more appropriate for a widow living alone. My grief support group leader, Patricia, says I'm stuck in the past and need to create new memories in a new space. But they don't understand. This house holds everything that still matters. The kitchen where Michael taught me his mother's cornbread stuffing recipe, the one he made every Thanksgiving. The living room where we watched Tyler grow from a toddler taking his first steps to a teenager getting ready for prom to a man bringing home the woman he wanted to marry. The bedroom where Michael died, where I still sleep on my side of the mattress even though there's no reason anymore to leave half of it empty. The rose garden Michael planted in the backyard the year Tyler was born. I tend those roses every Sunday morning like it's a religious ritual. I prune them, water them, talk to them like Michael can somehow hear me through the soil and the roots and whatever exists beyond this life. This isn't being stuck. This is making a conscious choice about what I refuse to lose. I already lost Michael. I'm not losing the house that still smells like him in certain rooms, that still creaks in the exact places where he used to walk. Tyler is 34 now. He works in medical device sales, traveling throughout the Southeast to pitch surgical equipment to hospitals. He makes good money, drives a new Audi, lives in what should be a comfortable life. He married Megan 5 years ago in a wedding that cost more than our first car. I remember watching her during the ceremony. Her smile looked genuine then, full of love and hope. But about 6 months after the wedding, that warmth disappeared whenever she looked at me. Now her smiles are tight and performative, like she's tolerating an obligation rather than enjoying family time. They have twin daughters, Sophia and Olivia, who turned 7 last month. Those girls are the only part of Tyler's life that still feels connected to the son I raised. When they visit, maybe twice a month, sometimes less, they run to me with construction paper drawings and stories about school. They ask if Grandpa's roses are blooming. They want to see the tree fort Michael built in the backyard before he died. They're innocent and pure in a way their parents stopped being years ago. Tyler spends those visits half present, constantly checking his phone, responding to work emails, making small talk that feels scripted and hollow. Megan makes pointed comments about my house. Must be nice having all this space just for yourself, she said during their last visit, walking through my dining room with an expression I couldn't quite read. We're basically on top of each other in our place. I can't even think straight with how cramped it is. At the time I thought she was just venting, making conversation, sharing normal frustrations about family life in a townhouse. Looking back now, I realize those visits weren't about family connection at all. They were reconnaissance. Tyler and Megan were studying my house, noting the layout, observing my routines, gathering information the way thieves study a bank before planning the robbery. I just didn't know I was the vault they were planning to crack open. That Tuesday morning, sitting with the fraud alert email glowing on my laptop screen, I felt something inside me crack and reshape. It was like watching water freeze, something fluid and warm turning hard and cold and impenetrable. I didn't call Tyler. Every maternal instinct screamed to pick up the phone, to give him a chance to explain, to believe there must be some reasonable explanation for why his IP address showed up on an attempted theft from my bank account. But some deeper wisdom held me back. Showing my hand too early would just make them more careful, more sophisticated in whatever they were planning next. Instead I called Catherine Brennan. Catherine is an estate attorney I met 3 years ago at the grief support group Patricia runs every Thursday evening at the community center. Catherine's husband died suddenly at 52, and before his funeral was even finished, his adult children from his first marriage appeared with a lawyer, contesting his will and questioning Catherine's mental competence. She told me that story over coffee after one of our group meetings, her voice flat and exhausted from fighting battles she never asked for. People reveal who they really are when money's involved, she'd said, stirring her coffee with slow, methodical movements. Family loyalty evaporates faster than you'd believe. Document everything, Linda. Trust no one when inheritance is on the table. We met the next morning at a Panera Bread near her downtown office. I brought my laptop, printed copies of the fraud alert, the bank's documentation of the failed transfer attempt. I showed her the timing, 11:47 p.m. on a Monday night, just hours after Tyler had visited for Sunday dinner, just after I'd left him alone in Michael's old office while I went to the kitchen to check on the pie in the oven. Catherine read through everything twice, her reading glasses perched on her nose, her expression growing darker with each page. When she finally looked up, she didn't look surprised. She looked resigned, like she'd seen this exact pattern unfold dozens of times before with other families, other children, other desperate plans. "They're testing your defenses," she said quietly. "This wasn't the real theft attempt. This was practice. They're learning your security protocols, figuring out what works and what gets flagged, gathering information for a bigger move. Next time they'll be smarter. Next time they'll find a way around the fraud detection." "What do I do?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Catherine looked at me across the table with eyes that held both sympathy and steel. "We build a trap. A documented, ironclad, legally unassailable trap. And then we let them walk right into it. That's how it started. 2 months of preparation, of building defenses, of waiting for Tyler and Megan to reveal their true intentions. And now, on Thanksgiving Day, with blood streaming down my face from where my daughter-in-law just threw a wine glass at my head, I was finally seeing the trap spring shut." Catherine's first move was brilliant and humbling in equal measure. The morning after our Panera meeting, she called me at 7 a.m. "I need you to see a geriatric neuropsychologist as soon as possible. Today, if we can manage it." "A neuropsychologist?" "Catherine, I'm not losing my mind. I know that. But if Tyler and Megan are planning what I think they're planning, their next step after failed financial manipulation will be to claim you're mentally incompetent. They'll say you're showing signs of dementia, that you can't manage your own affairs, that you need a guardian to protect you from yourself. And once they get guardianship, Linda, they control everything. Your house, your money, your medical decisions. Everything." My hands went cold around the phone. "Can they actually do that? If they can convince a judge you're cognitively impaired?" "Absolutely. I've seen it happen dozens of times. Adult children swoop in with concerns about mom's forgetfulness, dad's confusion, and before you know it, the parent is declared incompetent and loses all autonomy. We need ironclad medical proof that your mind is sharp, documented before any confrontation happens." She'd already made the appointment. Dr. Rebecca Lawson's office was in a medical building near Duke Hospital, 3rd floor, 2 p.m. that same afternoon. Dr. Lawson was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Her office was comfortable, filled with plants and soft lighting, nothing clinical or intimidating about it. Catherine explained the situation. Dr. Lawson said, gesturing for me to sit in a chair across from her desk. "You're not here because anyone thinks you have cognitive problems. You're here because we need to establish a baseline, create documentation that protects you legally." For the next 2 hours, she put me through a battery of tests I hadn't encountered since college. Memory exercises where she'd read me lists of words and ask me to recall them 5 minutes later. Logical reasoning puzzles involving patterns and sequences. Problem-solving scenarios with multiple steps. She asked me to draw a clock showing a specific time. To count backwards from 100 by sevens. To name as many animals as I could in 60 seconds. It was exhausting and oddly terrifying. At 61, I kept second-guessing myself, convinced I was failing, that she'd find some early sign of decline that Tyler could use against me. When I stumbled over a particularly complex math problem, I felt panic rising in my throat. But Dr. Lawson just smiled. "You're doing fine, Linda. These tests are designed to be challenging." She also asked detailed questions about my daily life. How I managed my finances. I showed her my checkbook register, neat and balanced to the penny. What my routines looked like. I described my morning coffee ritual, my Sunday rose garden maintenance, my Thursday grief support group meetings. Who my social connections were. I named friends from the group, neighbors I chatted with, the woman at the grocery store who always saved the best tomatoes for me. When we finished, Dr. Lawson reviewed her notes and looked up at me with an expression of genuine warmth. Linda, your cognitive function is not just normal for your age. It's well above average. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning skills are sharp. Your executive function shows no impairment whatsoever. If anyone tries to claim you're mentally incompetent, this evaluation will shut that down immediately. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. I'm going to write up a comprehensive report with all the test results and I'll have it notarized. Catherine will make sure it's filed properly with witnesses who have no connection to your family. This is your shield, Linda. Anyone who challenges your competence will have to overcome medical evidence that says otherwise. Catherine met me at a coffee shop an hour later to review the report. She read through it twice, nodding with satisfaction. This is exactly what we needed. Memory, reasoning, decision-making, all documented as excellent. If Tyler tries to claim you're declining, we have proof from before any conflict that you were completely sharp. The second step felt even more serious. Catherine brought in another attorney, Gerald Hoffman, who specialized in what he called contest-proof estate planning. We met in his office downtown, a place with mahogany furniture and law books lining every wall. Your current will is standard, Gerald explained, spreading my documents across his conference table. But standard doesn't protect against determined family members who want to challenge it. We need to rebuild this with specific protective language. For 3 hours we went through every clause, every contingency. Tyler remained a beneficiary. I wasn't ready to cut my only son out completely, some stubborn part of me still hoping I was wrong about his intentions. But the conditions we added made any manipulation pointless. If Tyler contested the will for any reason, he'd get nothing. If he claimed I was incompetent or under undue influence when I signed it, he'd be completely disinherited. If he tried to access my assets before my death through legal maneuvering, the same consequences would apply. We also created separate education trusts for Sophia and Olivia, each worth $200,000, managed by an independent trustee Catherine recommended. The girls would receive that money when they turned 25, regardless of what their parents did or said. Your granddaughters shouldn't suffer for their parents' choices, Gerald said. This protects them while also protecting you. Catherine made me read the entire revised will 3 times out loud, ensuring I understood every word, every consequence, every protection we'd built in. 3 witnesses I'd never met, associates from Gerald's firm, watched me sign and notarize the document. This isn't just a will anymore, Catherine said as we left Gerald's office. This is a legal fortress. If they attack, they lose everything. The third step felt like crossing into territory I never imagined I'd need. Catherine introduced me to Marcus Webb, a retired police detective who now worked as a private security consultant. He showed up at my house on a Wednesday morning carrying a black duffel bag filled with equipment. I install these systems for seniors every week, Marcus said, his voice matter-of-fact as he surveyed my living room. Adult children think their parents are easy targets because they don't expect surveillance. They get comfortable, they get careless, and that's when they reveal their true intentions. Over the next 4 hours, Marcus installed tiny cameras in my living room, dining room, kitchen, and front hallway. The devices were incredibly small, disguised inside everyday objects. One inside a decorative bookshelf, angled to capture the living room. One hidden in a kitchen clock, covering the dining area. One in a picture frame in the hallway. All of them recording continuously to cloud storage that only I could access with passwords Marcus set up on my laptop. Even if they find the cameras and try to destroy them, Marcus explained, the footage is already backed up remotely. They can't delete it. They can't alter it. And it's all time-stamped and authenticated, which means it holds up perfectly in court. I felt strange watching him work, like I was preparing for war inside my own home. This house where I'd raised Tyler, where Michael and I had celebrated 30 years of holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday evenings. Now it was wired with surveillance equipment to catch my own son in whatever he was planning. I know this feels wrong, Marcus said, noticing my expression. But I've seen what happens when people don't take precautions. The stories I could tell you would break your heart. Children who steal everything, who manipulate their parents into signing over property, who isolate them from friends and then claim they're incompetent. The cameras feel invasive now, but if your attorney's instincts are right, they're going to save you. While we built these defenses, Catherine was conducting her own investigation into Tyler and Megan's financial situation. She had contacts who could access public records, credit reports, property filings, everything legal but thorough. The results came in 2 weeks later. Catherine called and asked me to come to her office immediately. When I arrived, she had a thick folder spread across her desk, her expression grim. "Linda, sit down. What I'm about to show you is worse than I expected." She walked me through it page by page. Tyler and Megan's townhouse, purchased 5 years ago for $340,000, was now worth only $300,000. They were underwater by $40,000, owing more than the property was worth. 4 credit cards, all maxed out, totaling $68,000 in debt. Interest rates ranging from 19 to 24%. Tyler's Audi lease, 3 months behind on payments. A repossession notice had been filed last week. 2 missed mortgage payments. Foreclosure proceedings were scheduled to begin in January. "They're not struggling, Linda," Catherine said quietly. "They're drowning. They're 2 months away from losing everything." But the worst discovery was about Megan's parents. Catherine had found their employment termination records through public databases. Megan's father, James, had been fired from the Greensboro Fire Department after repeated safety protocol violations. 3 formal complaints, 2 suspensions, and finally termination after he endangered other firefighters during a training exercise. Megan's mother, Patricia, had been let go from her position as a hospital nurse after patient care complaints. Medication errors. Failure to follow protocols. A near-miss incident that almost resulted in a patient death. "They didn't retire comfortably like Megan claims," Catherine said. "They were forced out with minimal pensions and no unemployment benefits. They're essentially broke and homeless, which makes them desperate. And desperate people will do anything to survive." I stared at the financial documents, the termination letters, the foreclosure notices. The numbers blurred together. "This isn't about helping you," Catherine continued. "This is about their survival. Your house, worth $1.8 million, represents their only escape from complete financial ruin. They're not concerned about you living alone. They want to take over your home, establish residency, and then find a way to force you out while they claim the asset." I felt sick. "Tyler wouldn't." "Tyler already tried to steal $15,000 from your bank account," Catherine interrupted gently. "He crossed that line 2 months ago. Everything after that is just escalation." She showed me one more document. A property search history showing that someone had been researching my house's value, tax assessments, and ownership records extensively over the past 6 months. The searches came from Tyler's IP address. "They've been planning this for a while," Catherine said. "We're just getting ahead of them before they execute whatever their endgame is." I left Catherine's office that afternoon feeling like I was living in someone else's nightmare. But everything was in place now. The cognitive evaluation proving my competence. The ironclad will with protective language. The hidden cameras recording everything. The documentation of their financial desperation establishing clear motive. All we could do now was wait for them to make their move. The wait lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending everything was normal while cameras recorded my every movement in case Tyler showed up unannounced. 3 weeks of Sunday dinners where I smiled at my granddaughters while watching my son's eyes catalog my belongings like an appraiser. 3 weeks of sleeping fitfully, wondering when the trap would spring. Then Tyler called on the Monday before Thanksgiving. "Hey Mom, just confirming, we're still doing Thanksgiving at your place, right?" His voice sounded casual, friendly even, but I'd learned to hear the calculation underneath. "Of course. I always host Thanksgiving." "Great. We'll be there around 2. The girls are really excited to see you." After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Catherine's words echoed in my head. They'll escalate. They'll push boundaries. They'll create pressure. And when they do, we'll have evidence. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray, the sky the color of old concrete. I woke at 6 a.m. even though I didn't need to, my body too wired with anticipation to sleep. I made coffee in Michael's old mug and stood at the kitchen window watching the neighborhood wake up. My neighbor's teenage son was already setting up folding tables in their garage for their family gathering. Normal people having a normal holiday. I started cooking at 7. Herb roasted turkey with sage butter, the recipe Michael's mother had taught me 40 years ago. I rubbed the butter under the skin with hands that trembled slightly, remembering every Thanksgiving Michael had carved this same bird at this same table. His secret cornbread stuffing with sausage and apples. I diced the ingredients with precise, mechanical movements. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallow topping, Tyler's favorite since he was 5 years old and would eat 3 servings before touching any other food. The house filled with smells that used to mean love and safety and family. Now they felt like bait in a trap I'd helped set. I kept glancing at the bookshelf in the living room where Marcus had hidden the camera inside a decorative clock. You couldn't see it unless you knew exactly where to look. The one in the kitchen was disguised inside the wall clock above the sink. Every angle covered. Every word that would be spoken today would be recorded and backed up to cloud storage before the turkey was even carved. My phone buzzed around 10 a.m. Catherine, remember, stay calm no matter what happens. Let them talk. Let them show themselves. The cameras will do the rest. I'll have my phone on all day. I set the dining room table with Michael's mother's china, the delicate pieces with the blue cornflower pattern that had survived 3 generations. The good silverware that only came out for holidays. Cloth napkins I'd ironed that morning. Everything perfect, everything normal, everything a performance. At 1:47 p.m., I watched through the kitchen window as Tyler's Audi pulled into my driveway. The same car that was 3 months behind on lease payments according to Catherine's investigation. The status symbol of a life financed entirely on credit and desperation. Tyler got out first, then walked around to help the girls out of their car seats. Sophia and Olivia tumbled out in matching burgundy dresses, clutching construction paper turkeys they'd obviously made at school. Megan emerged last, moving with careful precision in high heels that were impractical for anything except making an impression. She was carrying a wine bottle that even from a distance looked expensive. I opened the door before they could ring the bell. Happy Thanksgiving. Sophia and Olivia ran to me immediately, wrapping their small arms around my waist. Grandma, we made turkeys at school. Mine has 17 feathers. Sophia held up her artwork proudly. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Both of them are. Did you use your handprints? Yeah. Mrs. Patterson helped us trace them and then we got to color them with whatever colors we wanted. I did rainbow. Olivia did purple because purple is her favorite. The girls chattered on about school and their upcoming winter concert and the new playground equipment while Tyler approached with a hug that felt stiff and performative, like he was embracing a business associate instead of his mother. House looks great, Mom. Thank you. Come in, come in. It's cold out there. Megan stepped forward with her air kiss that barely grazed my cheek, bringing with her a cloud of perfume that made my eyes water. Linda, thank you so much for having us. This wine is extraordinary, $1.20 a bottle. It's from Napa, this tiny vineyard that only produces a few hundred cases a year. She set it on my kitchen counter with a little flourish, like she was planting a flag. I recognized the gesture now for what it was, claiming territory, establishing dominance, setting the stage for whatever performance was about to unfold. You didn't have to bring anything, I said automatically. Oh, I insist. Family should celebrate properly. We settled into the living room while the turkey finished its final hour in the oven. This was normally when we'd make small talk, when the girls would show me their latest drawings, when Tyler would complain mildly about traffic or work. Normal family gathering rhythms. But today something felt immediately wrong. Tyler wasn't on his phone. He was focused, present, sitting forward on the couch with his hands clasped between his knees. Megan sat beside him in the same posture, and every few seconds they'd exchange these deliberate glances, like actors confirming their cues. The girls were playing with small toys on the floor, but I could see Sophia's shoulders were tense. She kept looking up at her parents with an expression I couldn't quite read, worry maybe, or confusion about why the adults were acting strange. So Mom, Tyler began, and immediately I recognized his sales voice. The smooth, practiced tone he used when pitching surgical equipment to hospital administrators. Megan and I have been discussing your living situation. Kept my face neutral, my voice casual. My living situation? This house. He gestured around the room. It's really too much for one person to handle. The maintenance, the yard work, just the daily management of this much space. I manage perfectly well. I have a cleaning service twice a month, lawn care every week. The house is paid off. I'm comfortable. Megan leaned forward, her face arranging itself into an expression of concern that looked rehearsed in front of a mirror. But Linda, you're alone here. What if you fall and no one finds you for hours? What if there's a medical emergency in the middle of the night? We worry about you constantly. I almost laughed at the transparency of the lie. They hadn't worried about me at all until they needed something from me. I have my Apple Watch with fall detection, I said. And my neighbors check on me regularly. Mrs. Patterson next door and I have coffee every Wednesday. Tyler and Megan exchanged another glance, longer this time, and I could see them recalibrating their approach. Here's the thing, Mom, Tyler continued. Megan's parents, you remember Jim and Patricia, they just retired last month. Her dad's pension from the fire department, her mom's retirement from the hospital. They sold their place in Greensboro, but the market here is brutal right now. Everything's overpriced and they're staying in a hotel burning through their savings. The lies were so smooth, so practiced. I knew from Catherine's investigation that Jim and Patricia hadn't retired, they'd been fired. That they had minimal pensions and no savings left to burn through. But I let Tyler keep talking. We thought, Megan jumped in, her voice climbing with manufactured enthusiasm, what if my parents moved in here temporarily? Just until they find something permanent. 6 months, maybe a year at most. They'd pay you rent, help with maintenance, keep you company. My mom was an ER nurse for 30 years. She'd be amazing if you had any medical issues. She was setting up the guardianship play. Get the in-laws established in my house, position them as my caretakers, then use that as evidence I couldn't live independently. I looked at Tyler, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my son's face. No. The single word landed like a stone in water. Megan's smile fractured at the edges. No. Just like that. You won't even consider it. I don't need to consider it. This is my home. I'm not interested in having roommates, temporary or otherwise. I value my privacy and my independence. Tyler's jaw tightened and I watched his sales pitch persona start to crack. Mom, be reasonable. We're trying to help you. I don't need help. What I need is for my family to respect my boundaries. Boundaries? Megan's voice went up an octave. Linda, we're talking about family. My parents are good people. They raised me, helped us with our down payment, babysit the girls every week. And now when they need help, you're just going to say no? When you have all this space sitting empty. It's not empty. I live here. You live here alone. Megan was standing now, her face flushed. Michael's been gone 4 years. When are you going to stop playing the grieving widow and think about someone besides yourself? That word, widow, was designed to wound, and it did. But I channeled Catherine's voice in my head. Stay calm. Let them show you who they are. The cameras are recording. I am thinking about myself, I said quietly. This is my home. My decision. And my answer is no. Tyler stood too, dropping any pretense of patience. Mom, you're being ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You have 3 empty bedrooms. 3. What are you even doing with them? Storing Michael's old golf clubs? Keeping a shrine? Tyler, that's enough. No, it's not enough. He was yelling now, his face red, veins visible in his neck. From the corner of my eye I saw Sophia's face crumple, tears starting to form. Do you have any idea what our mortgage costs? What childcare runs us every month? We're drowning, Mom. Drowning. And you're sitting here in a $2 million house acting like we're asking you to donate a kidney. Megan grabbed her wine glass, her hand shaking. You're being selfish, Linda. Utterly selfish. My parents gave up everything for their kids. And you can't even share a little space? When you're already alone in this massive house. I said no. You know what? Megan's voice had gone cold and sharp. You're not just selfish. You're cruel. You're a cruel old woman who's going to die alone in this house because you care more about your precious privacy than your own family. I stood up and my voice came out colder than I'd ever heard it. I think you need to leave now. And that's when Megan threw the wine glass directly at my head. The wine glass, heavy Waterford crystal that Michael's parents had given us as a wedding gift 36 years ago, flew through the air with shocking velocity. I watched it come toward me in what felt like slow motion but was probably less than a second. Then it connected with my left temple with a sound I'll never forget. A dull, wet crack followed by the musical tinkle of shattering glass. The impact registered before the pain. I felt the blow, felt my head snap slightly to the side from the force, felt warm liquid immediately streaming down my face. My hand went automatically to my temple and came away bright red with blood. The room tilted. I gripped the back of Michael's armchair to steady myself. Everything came into sharp focus. Sophia crying, a high-pitched wail of pure terror. Olivia frozen on the floor with her mouth open, her construction paper turkey forgotten in her lap. Megan standing with her hands still extended, her face cycling rapidly through emotions. Rage, shock, dawning horror as she realized what she'd just done. Tyler shouted, "Megan!" But he didn't move toward me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He turned immediately to his wife, reaching for her arm, trying to comfort her while she started crying. In that single moment I saw exactly where his loyalties lay. I touched my temple again. Blood was flowing freely now, soaking my fingers, dripping onto the collar of my cream blouse. The cut throbbed with each heartbeat. Wine mixed with blood on my skin, staining everything it touched. And beneath the shock and pain I felt something else. Satisfaction. Because 4 hidden cameras had just recorded everything. Every word of their rehearsed pitch. Every escalation. Every insult. The moment Megan grabbed the glass. The throw. The impact. My calm responses throughout. Tyler yelling about my 3 empty bedrooms, while his daughter cried in fear. The trap had sprung shut perfectly. "You need to leave," I said. My voice came out eerily calm, almost flat. "Mom," Tyler started. "Take the girls and leave my house. Now." Megan was sobbing, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean, I'm so sorry, I just." "You need to go," I repeated. "I'm going to the hospital." I walked to the bathroom with careful, measured steps, very aware that the hallway camera was recording my composed exit. Blood dripped onto my blouse, my hand the hardwood floor. I grabbed a kitchen towel from the linen closet and pressed it against the wound, then looked at myself in the mirror. Blood matted my gray hair. Wine stained my cream blouse in dark purple splotches. The gash above my eyebrow was deep, the edges ragged from where the crystal had torn the skin. My face was pale beneath the blood. I looked like a victim, which was exactly what the police needed to see. Behind the closed bathroom door I could hear Tyler's voice, low and urgent, trying to calm Megan. The twins were still crying. Dishes sat untouched on the dining room table. The turkey I'd spent 2 days preparing, the stuffing Michael had loved, all of it abandoned in the wreckage of this disaster. I walked back through the dining room. Tyler and Megan were on the couch now, her face buried in his shoulder, him murmuring something I couldn't hear. The girls had retreated to the far corner, huddled together. "Please leave and lock the door behind you," I said, grabbing my purse from the hall table. "My car keys. My phone. I'm going to the emergency room." Tyler stood up. "Mom, wait. Let me drive you. This was an accident. Megan didn't mean." "It's assault," I interrupted, my voice still that strange flat calm. "That's what the police will call it. And I need you to leave before I call them." "You're not going to call the police." Tyler's voice carried a note of disbelief. "She's family. He made a mistake. She's apologizing." She threw a glass at my head and opened a 2-inch gash that's going to need stitches. "That's not a mistake. That's assault." I walked past him to the front door. Tyler followed me, still talking, still trying to minimize what had just happened. "Mom, please. Think about the girls. Think about what this will do to them if you involve the police. Let's just talk about this. Megan will get help, anger management or something." I turned at the door and looked at my son. Really looked at him. "You stood there and called me ridiculous for not giving you my house. You yelled at me while your daughter cried in fear. And when your wife threw a glass at my head, you didn't check if I was okay. You comforted her. That tells me everything I need to know about who you've become." His face crumpled, but I was already walking out, already getting into my car. I drove 3 blocks before the adrenaline started wearing off and my hands began shaking on the steering wheel. Blood had soaked through the towel. The throbbing in my temple intensified into sharp, stabbing pain. I pulled over in a Target parking lot and sat there breathing carefully, methodically, keeping myself together. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Catherine. It worked perfectly. Her response came within seconds. On my way to Duke Regional. Don't talk to Tyler. Document everything. I started the car again and drove to the hospital, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror at red lights. The blood looked dramatic against my pale skin. The wine stains on my blouse would photograph well. I looked exactly like what I was. An elderly woman who'd been assaulted by her own family. Duke Regional Medical Center's emergency room was surprisingly manageable for Thanksgiving afternoon. Most people were still at home with their families, not yet dealing with the usual holiday injuries. A triage nurse took one look at my temple and immediately escalated my intake. "How did this happen?" she asked, gently examining the wound. "My daughter-in-law threw a wine glass at my head during Thanksgiving dinner." Her eyes widened slightly, but her professional composure held. "Hey, let's get you taken care of." I sat in the waiting room for maybe 15 minutes, pressing the blood-soaked towel to my head, when Catherine burst through the entrance doors. She was in jeans and a casual sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Clearly she'd been pulled away from her own family gathering. She saw me and her expression hardened into something fierce. "Show me." I pulled back the towel. The bleeding had slowed but hadn't stopped. The wound looked ugly, the edges ragged and gaping. "Tell me everything," Catherine said, sitting down beside me and pulling out her phone. "Every word. Every action. Exact sequence of events." I recounted the entire dinner. The way Tyler and Megan had sat on the couch like presenters at a business meeting. The rehearsed pitch about my living situation. Their coordinated tag teaming. Tyler's escalation into yelling about my 3 empty bedrooms. Megan's insults about me playing widow. The moment she grabbed the glass. The throw. Catherine took notes with rapid precision, asking clarifying questions. Who said what first? When exactly did Tyler start yelling? What were Megan's exact words before she threw the glass? She called me a cruel old woman who was going to die alone. Catherine's jaw tightened. And Tyler. He yelled at her name after she threw it. But he didn't come to me. He went to comfort her. Good. That's important for the statement. Catherine looked up from her phone. "Linda, I need to ask you directly. Do you want to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes. And I want a restraining order." Catherine nodded once, decisive. "I'll call Durham County Sheriff right now. Given your age, you're 61. This isn't just simple assault. North Carolina law has specific statutes for assault on a person over 60 by a family member. This is elder abuse, Linda. It's a serious felony." "A felony?" "For throwing a glass. For assault with a deadly weapon causing serious injury to an elderly person by a family member. That glass was a weapon. Your injury required medical treatment. You're over 60. She's family. All those factors elevate the severity." Within 30 minutes, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at the emergency room. The younger one was male, maybe late 20s, with short cropped hair and a professional demeanor. The senior deputy was a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that looked kind but had probably seen every form of human cruelty imaginable. They introduced themselves, Deputy James Martinez and Sergeant Ellen Kozlowski, and asked if we could speak somewhere private. A nurse directed us to a small consultation room off the main ER corridor. Sergeant Kozlowski pulled out a small recording device. "Mrs. Harper, we're going to document your statement. Take your time. Tell us everything that happened and we'll ask clarifying questions as needed." For the 3rd time that afternoon I recounted Thanksgiving dinner. But this time I was more detailed, more specific. The deputies listened with focused attention, Sergeant Kozlowski taking written notes while the recorder captured my voice. When I mentioned the failed bank transfer attempt from 2 months earlier, Tyler's attempt to steal $15,000 using my personal security information, both deputies' expressions sharpened. "Ma'am, have you filed a report about that incident?" Deputy Martinez asked. "Not yet. But I have all the documentation from my bank." "We'll need to see that," Sergeant Kozlowski said. "Financial exploitation combined with physical assault. That's a pattern we see frequently in elder abuse cases. This wasn't just a family argument that got out of hand. This was escalation from an ongoing situation." They asked Catherine for her contact information, took copies of the bank fraud alerts on her phone, and then asked permission to photograph my injury. Sergeant Kozlowski took photos from multiple angles with a professional camera, Close-ups of the gash, wider shots showing my blood-stained blouse, my wine-soaked collar, the exhaustion and stress visible in my face. "We're going to bag your blouse as evidence," Deputy Martinez said. "Do you have something else to wear?" A nurse brought me hospital scrubs. I changed in the bathroom, carefully peeling off the ruined blouse. Looking at it, the wine stains, the blood, the physical evidence of what my daughter-in-law had done, made something crack inside my chest. This was really happening. My family had really tried to destroy me. When I emerged, Sergeant Kozlowski was speaking quietly with Catherine. She turned to me with an expression of professional compassion. "Mrs. Harper, we're going to contact your son and daughter-in-law tonight for statements. Based on what you've told us and the evidence we've documented, we'll be filing assault charges against Megan. Given the circumstances, this will likely be charged as assault with a deadly weapon causing serious injury. That's a Class E felony in North Carolina." "What happens next?" I asked. "She'll be arrested probably tomorrow morning. She'll be processed, arraigned, and a judge will set bond. You can request an emergency protective order, which I strongly recommend. We'll include that in our report." After they left, a doctor finally came to examine my wound. He was young, probably a resident, with gentle hands and a calm bedside manner. "This is going to need stitches," he said, cleaning the area with antiseptic that stung sharply. 6, maybe 7. "It's deep but clean. Should heal well, though you'll have a scar." As he worked, threading the needle through my skin with careful precision, I thought about that scar. How I'd see it every day for the rest of my life. How it would be a permanent reminder of the day my son chose his drowning marriage over his own mother. The day I finally stopped making excuses for family and started protecting myself instead. The doctor finished, applied a bandage, and handed me care instructions and a prescription for antibiotics. Catherine drove me home. My house was dark and empty when we pulled into the driveway. Part of me had expected Tyler to be waiting on the porch, but the street was quiet, just the distant sounds of other families finishing their Thanksgiving celebrations. "Let's check the footage," Catherine said. We went straight to my office, a small room at the back of the house that used to be Michael's workspace. His desk was still here, the one he'd refinished from a yard sale find 30 years ago. I'd kept it exactly as he'd left it, though now my laptop sat where his accounting ledgers used to be. I pulled up the cloud storage system Marcus had set up, my fingers trembling slightly as I entered the password. Catherine pulled a chair close beside me, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "Start from when they arrived," she said quietly. I clicked on the living room camera feed and dragged the timeline back to 1:47 p.m. The screen showed my empty living room, then Tyler appearing in the doorframe, followed by the girls, then Megan. We watched in silence as the afternoon unfolded from 4 different angles. The living room camera captured everything with brutal clarity. Tyler and Megan settling onto the couch, their postures identical, both leaning forward, both with this rehearsed intensity. Every few seconds they'd make eye contact, these deliberate glances that looked like actors checking their cues. The girls playing on the floor, gradually getting quieter, their small bodies tensing as they sensed something wrong. "Look at that," Catherine said, pausing the footage. "See how synchronized they are. That's not spontaneous concern. That's a practiced presentation." He was right. Watching it from this remove, with the shock and adrenaline worn off, the choreography was obvious. The way Megan would speak, then Tyler would build on what she said. The way they'd pass the conversation back and forth like a relay race. They'd rehearsed this, probably multiple times, refining their pitch until it sounded natural. We switched to the dining room camera angle, watching the escalation. Megan standing up, her voice climbing. Tyler joining her, his sales persona cracking into genuine anger. And me, sitting in Michael's chair, my voice calm and level throughout. My face composed. My hands steady. "You look completely rational," Catherine observed. "Even when they're yelling, you're measured and calm. That's crucial, Linda. It shows you weren't the aggressor. You weren't emotional or out of control. You were simply maintaining boundaries." The kitchen camera showed Megan grabbing the wine glass. We watched her hand shake, watched her face contort with rage as she picked it up. Catherine replayed that section 3 times, watching the exact moment when Megan's anger transformed into action. "Premeditated," Catherine muttered. It wasn't a reflexive throw. She picked up the glass, held it for 2 full seconds while she was yelling, then made the decision to throw it. "That's intentional assault," not heat-of-the-moment reaction. Then we switched to the hallway camera with the wide angle that captured the living room, dining room and front entrance all at once. This was the angle that showed everything. The glass flew through the frame in slow motion. I could see the wine sloshing inside the crystal as it tumbled through the air. The impact against my temple. My head snapping slightly to the side. Blood immediately visible. The glass shattering, pieces falling onto the carpet. Sophia's scream was loud enough that the audio peaked and distorted slightly. But what made my chest tighten was what came next. Tyler didn't move toward me. He turned to Megan, reached for her, pulled her into a hug while she started sobbing. The girls were crying in the corner. And I stood there, touched my bleeding temple, walked calmly to the bathroom. "He didn't check on you," Catherine said, her voice hard. "His mother is bleeding from a head wound and he comforts his wife instead. That tells a jury everything they need to know about his priorities." We watched the rest. My composed exit, my quiet statement that they needed to leave, Tyler following me to the door, still making excuses for Megan. All of it captured in perfect clarity with timestamps and audio that would hold up in any court. "This is extraordinary evidence," Catherine said finally. "Clear video, multiple angles, clear audio, no ambiguity whatsoever. You look rational and in control throughout. They look rehearsed and then unhinged. A prosecutor's dream." I saved clips from all 4 angles to a separate folder. My hands were steadier now, the shock giving way to something colder and more focused. Catherine closed her laptop and pulled out a different folder I hadn't seen before. "Linda, there's something else we need to discuss. Something I discovered while you were preparing for today." She spread documents across Michael's old desk. Financial records, property filings, employment verification requests, credit reports. "I've been investigating deeper into Tyler and Megan's situation," she said. "What I found is worse than we initially thought." She walked me through it piece by piece, her finger tracing lines of data that painted a devastating picture. Tyler and Megan's townhouse in Cary, purchased 5 years ago for $340,000, was now worth only $300,000. The entire housing market in that area had softened, but they'd also let the property deteriorate. They were underwater by $40,000. They owed more than the house was worth. But that was just the beginning. 4 credit cards, all maxed to their limits. Total debt, $68,000. Interest rates ranging from 19% to 24%. Predatory rates that meant their minimum monthly payments were probably close to $1,500 just for credit card debt. Tyler's Audi lease, the car I'd seen in my driveway just hours ago, was 3 months behind on payments. A repossession notice had been filed last week. He was probably days away from having the car seized. "They've missed 2 mortgage payments," Catherine said, pointing to another document. "Foreclosure proceedings are scheduled to start in January. They have maybe 60 days before they lose the townhouse entirely." The numbers swam in front of my eyes. How had Tyler let things get this bad? But Catherine wasn't finished. She pulled out employment records. Official documents she must have obtained through legal channels I didn't want to know about. "Megan's parents," she said. "She told you they retired, right? That they sold their house in Greensboro and were just looking for something in the area?" I nodded. "That's completely false." Catherine spread out termination letters. "James, Megan's father, was fired from the Greensboro Fire Department 8 months ago. Not retired. Fired. He'd received 3 formal complaints over 2 years for safety protocol violations. Showing up to shifts impaired. Failing to maintain equipment properly. The final incident involved him endangering other firefighters during a training exercise. He was terminated with cause, which means no severance, minimal pension." She pulled out another document. "Patricia, Megan's mother, was let go from her position as a hospital nurse 6 months ago. Multiple patient care complaints. Medication errors. Failure to follow protocols. There was a near-miss incident where she almost administered the wrong medication to a cardiac patient. The hospital gave her the option to resign rather than face termination, but the result is the same. No unemployment benefits. Minimal pension." I felt sick. "So when Megan said they retired comfortably." "She lied," Catherine said flatly. "They're broke, Linda. Between them they have maybe $2,000 a month in pension income. That won't cover rent anywhere in the Triangle. They're not looking for a temporary place to stay. They're desperate for permanent housing because they have nowhere else to go. She laid out one more document. And here's the part that connects everything. 3 weeks ago, someone ran an extensive property search on your house. They pulled tax assessments, recent sales comparables, zoning information, ownership history. The searches came from Tyler's IP address. They were researching how to take my house, I said slowly. Not just researching. Planning. Catherine leaned back in her chair. Here's what I think they were doing. Step 1. Get Megan's parents established in your house as residents. Step 2. Create situations where you seem to need supervision. Maybe you forget appointments they claim you made, maybe you have small accidents they arrange. Step 3. They petition for emergency guardianship, claiming you're showing cognitive decline and can't care for yourself safely. Step 4. Once they have guardianship, they have legal authority to make all decisions about your care and your assets. Step 5. They sell your house, liquidate your investments, place you in a Medicaid nursing facility while they split nearly $2 million. The room felt too small suddenly. Tyler wouldn't do that to me. Linda. Catherine's voice was gentle but firm. Tyler tried to steal $15,000 from your bank account 2 months ago. He's 3 months behind on his car payments. He's facing foreclosure. His in-laws are essentially homeless. And today he stood in your living room and called you ridiculous for not giving them access to your house. He's not the son you raised anymore. He's a desperate man who sees your assets as his only way out of financial ruin. I stared at the documents spread across Michael's desk. Numbers and letters that added up to betrayal in its purest form. The assault today wasn't planned, Catherine continued. That was Megan losing control because you refused to cooperate. But it actually works in your favor. Her rage revealed their desperation before they could execute the slower, more insidious plan. That wine glass was terrible in the moment, but it might have saved you from something much worse. We sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the gentle hum of my computer's fan. Finally, Catherine pulled out a legal pad and started making a list. Here's what we need to do immediately. First, file for the emergency protective order against Megan using the video evidence. That happens tomorrow morning. Second, file a formal complaint about the financial exploitation with Durham Police, including all the bank records and IP address evidence. Third, revise your will again with even stronger protective language. We add specific clauses about Tyler's financial situation and the attempted manipulation. Fourth, establish the education trusts for Sophia and Olivia with an independent trustee, completely separate from any inheritance Tyler might receive. Fifth, we compile all this financial documentation to establish motive for the elder abuse charges. She worked methodically, writing names of attorneys, court filing numbers, deadlines. I watched her create a fortress of legal protection around my life, around the house Michael and I had built together, around the assets we'd spent 30 years accumulating. They're going to panic when Megan gets arrested, Catherine warned, looking up from her notes. Probably tomorrow morning. Tyler will call you. He'll text. He might show up at your door. Linda, you cannot engage with him. Not even to tell him to leave you alone. Any contact could be used by their attorney to claim you're not really afraid, that the assault wasn't as serious as you're claiming, that this is just a family dispute blown out of proportion. What do I do if he shows up? You call the police immediately. You don't answer the door. You don't respond to texts or calls. All communication goes through me. I'll be your barrier between you and them. It was nearly midnight when Catherine finally gathered her things to leave. I walked her to the door, my body aching with exhaustion, the stitches in my temple throbbing with each heartbeat. At the door, she turned and gripped both my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. Linda, what happened today was horrible. Genuinely horrible. But in a strange way, that wine glass was a gift. It revealed their true nature before they could execute their real plan. If Megan hadn't lost control, if they'd managed to get her parents into this house, you'd be fighting a much harder battle 6 months from now. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Get some sleep, Catherine said. Tomorrow starts the legal process. It's going to be difficult, but you're not alone. I've got you. After she left, I stood in my quiet house, surrounded by memories and evidence and the wreckage of what my family had become. The Thanksgiving turkey sat cold and forgotten in the kitchen. Dishes were still set on the dining room table. Blood stains marked the carpet where I'd stood after Megan threw the glass. I walked through each room, turning off lights, checking locks. The cameras were still recording, would continue recording every moment until this was over. In my bedroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The bandage on my temple looked stark white against my pale skin. My eyes looked older than they had this morning, like I'd aged years in a single afternoon. I climbed into bed on my side of the mattress, leaving Michael's side empty out of habit. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Other families sleeping off their Thanksgiving dinners, unaware that 3 blocks away, a mother had just watched video footage of her own son choosing his wife over her bleeding body. I closed my eyes, but sleep was a long time coming. I woke Friday morning to pale gray light filtering through my bedroom curtains. My temple throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. For a few disoriented seconds, I forgot what had happened. Then I touched the bandage on my forehead and everything came rushing back. I made coffee in Michael's mug and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dried blood stains on the carpet near the living room. I should clean those, I thought distantly. But I couldn't make myself move. At 9:47 a.m. my phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Arrest warrant executed. Megan in custody. I sat very still, coffee growing cold in my hands, trying to imagine what was happening 40 minutes away in Cary. Deputies at Tyler and Megan's door. The knock that wakes you from whatever desperate sleep you manage to find. Megan being told she was under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. Handcuffs. The walk to the patrol car while neighbors watched from windows. Were the twins there? Did Sophia and Olivia watch their mother being taken away by police? Part of me felt sick at the thought. Part of me felt something darker. A grim satisfaction that justice was happening, that consequences were real, that Megan couldn't throw a glass at someone's head and simply apologize her way out of it. My phone rang at 10:23 a.m. Tyler's name on the screen. I stared at it, watched it ring through to voicemail. Listened to the notification chime that he'd left a message. I didn't listen to it. The phone rang again at 10:31. Tyler. Voicemail. 10:45. Tyler. Voicemail. 11:02. Tyler. Voicemail. By noon I'd stopped counting. My phone buzzed constantly, the screen lighting up with his name over and over like an accusation. I turned the ringer off and put the phone face down on the counter. Catherine called at 1:15 p.m. How are you holding up? Tyler's been calling all morning. I know. He's called my office 26 times since 10 a.m. I haven't answered. Neither should you. I haven't. Good. There was a pause, then Catherine's voice softened slightly. Linda, I know this is hard. He's your son. But any contact right now could be used against you. Their attorney, and they will get an attorney, will argue that if you were really afraid of them, you wouldn't be taking their calls. That the assault wasn't serious. That this is just a family dispute you're weaponizing. I understand. Megan posted bond about an hour ago. $15,000. Tyler probably maxed out another credit card or borrowed from someone. She's out, but she's under conditions. No contact with you, surrender of passport, promise to appear for all court dates. After we hung up, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls. All Tyler. 3 voicemails I wouldn't listen to. 2 text messages. The first, Mom, please pick up. We need to talk about this. Megan didn't mean to hurt you. She's devastated. The girls are scared. Please. The second, I can't believe you're doing this to our family. I set the phone down and walked away. At 3:30 p.m. Catherine texted again. Protective order granted. Judge Martinez reviewed footage and signed immediately. Megan cannot come within 500 feet of you or your property. Violation means immediate arrest. I should have felt relief. Instead I felt hollow. My daughter-in-law couldn't come near me. My son was calling desperately, trying to bridge a chasm that was widening with each unanswered ring. My granddaughters were somewhere being told things about Grandma that would shape how they remembered me forever. By the time I went to bed Friday night, Tyler had called 43 times. Catherine's office had counted. None of the calls were answered. I fell asleep with my phone on silent, the screen dark, the notifications piling up like stones. Saturday morning I woke with purpose. Catherine had scheduled an appointment at Durham Police Department headquarters for 10 a.m. I dressed carefully, conservative blouse, slacks, minimal jewelry. I wanted to look competent, credible, like a woman who knew her own mind and could be trusted. Catherine met me in the parking lot carrying a leather briefcase that looked substantial and serious. Ready as I'll ever be. Inside, the police station smelled like coffee and disinfectant. We were directed to Detective Sarah Kozlov's office on the second floor. She was a woman in her late 50s with iron-gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that looked kind but had probably seen every variation of human cruelty. "Mrs. Harper, Miss Brennan, please sit." Detective Kozlov gestured to 2 chairs across from her desk. "I've reviewed the preliminary assault report from Thanksgiving. I understand you're here to file an additional complaint regarding financial exploitation." "Yes," Catherine said, pulling documents from her briefcase. "Over the past 3 months, Mrs. Harper's son Tyler made multiple attempts to access her bank accounts without authorization, using personal information only family members would know. For the next hour we walked Detective Kozlov through everything. The initial fraud alert from the bank. The IP address tracing to Tyler's townhouse. The timeline showing the access attempts correlated exactly with Tyler's visits to my house. The security questions. Michael's mother's maiden name, our College Street address, our first dog's name. Information Tyler had gathered over years of family dinners and holiday celebrations. Detective Kozlov took notes, her expression growing darker as we progressed. "Financial exploitation of vulnerable adults is one of the fastest-growing crimes in North Carolina," she said. "Most victims are over 60. Most perpetrators are family members. The fact that this escalated to physical violence suggests they were getting desperate. They're facing foreclosure," Catherine added. 2 months from losing their home. Significant credit card debt. The financial pressure was mounting. Detective Kozlov nodded slowly. "That tracks with what we see. Financial desperation plus family access equals exploitation. I'm opening a formal investigation today. We'll subpoena the bank records, get the full history of access attempts. Mrs. Harper, I want you to understand this will take time. Financial crimes are complex to prosecute, especially when family relationships are involved." "I understand," I said. "I just want it documented. I want a record that this happened." "You'll have that," Detective Kozlov promised. Within the week, the bank provided comprehensive records to the police. Not just the one failed transfer attempt I knew about, but multiple attempts over 3 months. Tyler and Megan had been practicing, testing my security protocols, learning which questions they could answer, preparing for a larger theft. The bank's fraud detection system had blocked every attempt, but the pattern was clear. Systematic, deliberate, escalating. Monday afternoon, Catherine and I met with Gerald Hoffman in his downtown office. This was our 3rd attorney meeting in a week, but this one felt the most permanent, the most final. "We're building what I call a bulletproof will," Gerald explained, spreading documents across his conference table. "Not just protective language but punitive consequences for any challenge or manipulation." We spent 3 hours going through every clause, every contingency, every possible attack vector Tyler or Megan might use to contest my estate. Gerald's approach was methodical and ruthless. Tyler remained a beneficiary. I wasn't ready to completely disinherit my only son, some stubborn part of me still hoping for reconciliation years from now. But the conditions were ironclad. No contesting the will for any reason. No claims of incompetence or undue influence. No attempts to access my assets before my death through guardianship or power of attorney. Any violation of these conditions would trigger complete disinheritance. Tyler would receive nothing. Not a dollar. Not a photograph. Nothing. "We're also creating separate education trusts for your granddaughters," Gerald said. $200,000 each, managed by an independent trustee Catherine will recommend. The girls receive the money at age 25 regardless of what their parents do or say. Tyler and Megan can't touch it, can't contest it, can't use it as leverage. "These girls deserve a future even if their parents are predators," I said, my voice catching slightly. Gerald looked at me over his reading glasses. "You're protecting innocence while punishing manipulation. That's exactly what a good will should do." 3 witnesses from Gerald's firm, people I'd never met who had no connection to Tyler or Megan, watched me sign the document. Each page was initialed, notarized, filed with the county clerk. By the time we finished, my estate was a legal fortress that would take an army of lawyers years to penetrate. Tuesday afternoon I was reading in my living room when the doorbell rang. The sound made me flinch. I'd been jumpy since Thanksgiving, startling at every unexpected noise. I pulled up the security camera feed on my phone. Tyler stood on my porch looking like he'd aged 10 years in 5 days. Unshaven. Rumpled clothes that might have been the same ones he'd worn at Thanksgiving. Dark circles under bloodshot eyes. He looked broken. Part of me wanted to open the door. Part of me wanted to mother him, to fix whatever was wrong, to make everything okay like I'd done when he was small and the world hurt him. But I'd learned that some hurts are self-inflicted. Some pain is earned. I pressed the intercom button, creating a barrier of technology between us. The protective order doesn't include you, but I'm asking you to leave. Tyler's voice came through tinny and desperate. Mom, please. Just 5 minutes. I need to explain. I need you to understand. Understand what? I interrupted. That you tried to steal $15,000 from my bank account? That you researched my property value to plan how to take my house? That you stood in my living room calling me ridiculous while your wife threw a glass at my head? His face crumpled on the screen. We were desperate, Mom. The townhouse, we're going to lose it. Megan's legal fees are going to destroy us. Her parents have nowhere to go. The girls. Stop, I said, my voice harder than I'd ever used with him. Tyler, I raised you better than this. I taught you about integrity, about asking for help honestly instead of trying to manipulate it. You didn't come to me and say, Mom, we're struggling financially. You tried to hack my bank account. You tried to push Megan's parents into my home as step 1 of a guardianship scheme. That's not desperation. That's betrayal. I didn't know Megan would. Yes, you did. You stood there and watched her escalate. You yelled right alongside her. You called me selfish and ridiculous. And when she threw that glass, you didn't protect me. You comforted her. Silence stretched between us, filtered through an intercom speaker and a locked door. I've updated my will, I continued. You're still in it, but with conditions. Any attempt to contest it, any claim that I'm incompetent, any legal maneuvering to access my assets before I die, you get nothing. There are education trusts for Sophia and Olivia that you can't touch. That's what's left, Tyler. That's what remains of our relationship. Mom. His voice broke. I love you, Tyler. I will always love you. But I don't trust you anymore. And I'm not sure I even like who you've become. If you want any relationship with me going forward, it will be on my terms with clear boundaries and only after you've done serious work on yourself. Until then, please leave me alone. I turned off the intercom and watched through the camera as he stood there, mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find words that wouldn't come. His shoulders shook. He might have been crying. He stood on my porch for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I timed it, watching the security feed, my own vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Then he turned and walked back to his car, the Audi that would probably be repossessed within days, and drove away. I sat on the floor of my hallway, back against the wall beneath the camera that had recorded everything, and let myself cry for the first time since Thanksgiving. Not for my injury. Not for the assault. But for the death of the relationship I'd thought I had with my son. For the realization that the Tyler I'd raised, the boy who'd cried in my arms after his first heartbreak, who'd called me from college just to hear my voice, was gone, replaced by a desperate man who saw me as an obstacle between him and financial survival. When the crying finally stopped, I was empty and exhausted and strangely at peace. The cameras kept recording. The house stayed quiet. And I began to understand what it meant to choose myself over a family that had already chosen to destroy me. The weeks after Tyler's porch confrontation blurred together in a strange rhythm of legal proceedings and forced normalcy. I'd wake up, make coffee, check the security cameras out of habit even though no one was coming. I'd tend Michael's roses on Sundays. I'd attend my grief support group on Thursdays. And every few days, Catherine would call with updates about court dates, hearings, motions filed and denied. Megan's case moved through the court system with bureaucratic slowness. Her arraignment happened 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Catherine attended on my behalf while I stayed home, unwilling to sit in the same courtroom as the woman who'd assaulted me. Megan pleaded not guilty initially, which surprised exactly no one. Her attorney was a young public defender named Marcus Webb, no relation to the security consultant who'd installed my cameras. He looked barely 30, exhausted in that way public defenders always do, carrying too many cases with too few resources. Catherine said he'd approached her before the hearing asking about a plea deal. He's seen the video, Catherine told me over coffee at our usual Panera. He knows she can't win at trial. He's trying to minimize damage. The plea negotiations stretched over months. Megan's attorney argued it was a one-time incident, stress-related, completely out of character. He submitted letters from former colleagues at the hospital where she'd worked before the twins were born, describing her as compassionate and patient. Letters from her parents. The same parents who'd been fired from their jobs but were now portrayed as upstanding citizens. Even a letter from Tyler describing Megan as a devoted mother overwhelmed by financial pressure. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman named Diana Chin, countered with the security footage. She made the court watch all 4 camera angles. She highlighted the rehearsed nature of their pitch, the coordinated tag teaming, the escalation that showed calculation rather than spontaneous loss of control. She didn't just throw wine in a moment of anger, Diana argued during one hearing I attended via video conference. She picked up a heavy crystal glass, held it while she continued yelling, then made a deliberate decision to throw it at an elderly woman's head. That's assault with a deadly weapon, not heat-of-the-moment reaction. Judge Martinez, a stern woman in her 60s who reminded me of my high school principal, watched the footage 3 separate times in chambers. Catherine said the judge's face remained impassive throughout, but she took extensive notes. In late March, 4 months after Thanksgiving, Megan took a plea deal. Assault causing serious injury, reduced from the original felony charge of assault with a deadly weapon. 18 months probation with strict conditions. 200 hours of community service. Mandatory anger management counseling. 1 session per week for the entire probation period. And the part that mattered most to me, a permanent protective order. Megan couldn't come within 500 feet of me or my property for the rest of her life. She couldn't contact me directly or through third parties. She couldn't attend events where I was present. If I showed up at a future school graduation for Sophia or Olivia, Megan would have to leave. The elder abuse aspect is noted in the court record, Catherine explained after the sentencing hearing. But it wasn't prosecuted as a separate charge. The judge wanted it documented in case there's any future behavior pattern. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. My daughter-in-law had a criminal record now. My son's wife was a convicted criminal. My granddaughters would grow up knowing their mother had assaulted their grandmother. Detective Kozlov's investigation into the financial exploitation took longer and ended with results that left me frustrated and angry. By April, she had everything documented. The multiple access attempts over 3 months, the IP addresses all tracing to Tyler's townhouse, the security questions only family would know, the pattern of escalation clearly visible in the bank records. She presented it all to the Durham County District Attorney's Office recommending charges of attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The DA declined to prosecute. Given the family relationship and the fact that no funds were actually stolen, the assistant DA explained during a phone call Catherine put on speaker in her office, "We don't feel criminal charges are warranted at this time. These cases are extremely difficult to prosecute. Juries are sympathetic to family financial struggles. And without actual theft occurring, we'd likely lose at trial." Catherine's face went red. He attempted theft multiple times. That's a crime regardless of whether he succeeded. That's like saying attempted murder doesn't count because the victim didn't die. I understand your frustration, Ms. Brennan, but our office has to allocate resources strategically. We're pursuing the assault case vigorously. The financial matter is better handled through civil remedies and banking protocols. After the call ended, Catherine sat fuming in her office chair. This is exactly the problem with elder abuse prosecution. Juries see adult children struggling financially and think, well, the parent has money, why shouldn't they help? They don't recognize it as theft. But if the legal system wouldn't punish Tyler, the banking system did. My bank permanently flagged his information in my security protocols. They created additional authentication requirements for any account changes. Now I needed to appear in person with 2 forms of ID for any significant transactions. They assigned my accounts to a special monitoring status where any unusual activity would trigger immediate manual review. Tyler could never access my money again. The digital fortress Catherine and I had built was complete, even if the criminal one had gaps. We file all the investigation records anyway, Catherine said, organizing documents into a thick folder. If he ever tries anything again, Any financial manipulation, any guardianship petition, any legal action. We have established pattern of predatory behavior documented in official police reports. This isn't a win, Linda, but it's protection. The letter started in February, a month after Tyler's confrontation at my door. The first arrived in a plain white envelope with Tyler's return address in Cary. Handwritten, not typed. His handwriting looked shakier than I remembered. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know saying it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know I never meant for any of this to happen. Megan was under so much stress. The townhouse, her parents, the girls. I should have protected you. I should have stopped her before things escalated. I failed as a son. I'm sorry. I read it once, sitting at my kitchen table with coffee growing cold. Then I filed it in a folder I labeled Tyler, Evidence, and put it in my office filing cabinet. The second letter came a week later, longer, more detailed. Mom, I need you to understand what we were facing. The mortgage was 3 months behind. They were going to foreclose. We were going to lose everything. The house, our credit, the stability the girls need. Megan's parents really were desperate. I thought if they could just stay with you temporarily, it would give us breathing room to figure things out. I never wanted to take your house. I just wanted help. That one I read twice, analyzing the language. The way he framed their plan as help, rather than manipulation. The way he positioned their financial crisis as my problem to solve. I filed it with the first letter. Over 7 months, 10 more letters arrived. Some were weeks apart. Some came in clusters. 3 letters in 5 days, like Tyler was spiraling and writing was his only outlet. Letter 3 justified the bank access attempts. I was just trying to check on your finances to make sure you were okay, to see if you needed help managing things. Letters 4 and 5 were purely apologetic again, describing Megan's stress, their marriage counseling, their efforts to rebuild. Letter 6 included photos of Sophia and Olivia at their school's spring concert, with a note. The girls miss you so much. They ask about you constantly. They don't understand why Grandma won't see them anymore. That one landed like a knife between my ribs. I stared at the photos, the twins in matching dresses holding recorders, smiling at the camera, and felt grief so acute it was physical. But I didn't respond. Because using the girls as emotional leverage was manipulation, and I recognized it now. Letters 7 and 8 turned subtly accusatory. I can't believe you'd destroy our family over one mistake. Megan was having a breakdown. He's getting help now. Anger management, therapy, everything. You're choosing your house and your pride over your own son and granddaughters. Letter 9 was short. Mom, please. Just talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Letters 10 and 11 arrived in June, 7 months after Thanksgiving. By then Tyler's tone had shifted to something approaching acceptance. I know you're not going to respond. I know I destroyed your trust. But I need you to know I love you. I'll always love you. And if you ever decide you want to talk, I'm here. I read each letter once, filed it in the folder, and never wrote back. Because words on paper were easy. Tyler could craft apologies, explain circumstances, frame desperation as justification. But I remembered the reality. The calculation in his eyes during Thanksgiving dinner, the sales pitch he and Megan had rehearsed, the way he'd comforted his wife instead of checking on his bleeding mother. Words meant nothing compared to those memories. While Tyler sent letters I wouldn't answer, I was slowly rebuilding the life they tried to steal. 7 months after Thanksgiving, on a Saturday morning in early June, I stood in Michael's home office and made a decision I'd been avoiding for 4 years. The room had remained exactly as he'd left it. His golf magazines stacked on the corner of the desk. His reading glasses on the windowsill catching morning light. His favorite cardigan, navy blue with worn elbows, hanging on the desk chair like he'd just stepped out for a moment and would be back any second. I'd been preserving it like a shrine. Like keeping everything frozen meant Michael wasn't really gone. But he was gone. Had been gone for 4 years. And I was still here, still living, still breathing, still capable of creating something new. I started with the magazines. Recycled them, every single one. The reading glasses I packed carefully and donated to the Lions Club. The cardigan I held for a long moment, breathing in the faint scent that might have been Michael or might have been my imagination, then folded it gently and added it to the donation box. His golf clubs, the expensive set he'd saved for 3 years to buy, I donated to a youth program that taught underserved kids. Michael would have liked that. By afternoon the office was empty. Just the desk and the chair and the blank walls and the window overlooking the backyard where Michael's roses still bloomed every summer. I bought watercolor supplies at an art store near Cameron Village. Easel, paper, brushes, a beginner set of paints in tubes with colors I couldn't name. The young woman who helped me was patient and enthusiastic, probably assuming I was a grandmother trying a new hobby. She was right, I suppose. That's exactly what I was. I painted badly at first. Clumsy landscapes that looked like a child's work. Still lives of fruit that resembled colorful blobs more than apples and oranges. But it felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Every Sunday morning I painted while coffee cooled on the desk beside me. I joined the widows support group Patricia ran, the one I'd been attending sporadically but never fully engaging with. Met Janet, a retired English professor who'd lost her husband 2 years ago and had a laugh that sounded like music. We started having coffee after meetings, then lunch on Tuesdays, then planning a road trip through the Blue Ridge Parkway for August. Catherine and I transitioned from attorney-client to actual friends. She invited me to her daughter's wedding in May, and I sat in the church watching a family celebrate without manipulation or hidden agendas and cried happy tears that had nothing to do with my own life. My investments were performing well. The house continued appreciating, now worth over $2 million according to the latest assessment. I was comfortable, secure, insulated from the financial desperation that had driven Tyler and Megan to destruction. And slowly, carefully I was learning what it meant to choose myself. To protect my peace. To recognize that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of their dysfunction. The cameras kept recording. The lock stayed strong. The will remained ironclad. And I was finally, tentatively learning how to live again. The mail arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in late August, 8 months after Thanksgiving. I was coming back from the grocery store, carrying bags of produce from the farmer's market, when I saw the small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name and address written in careful, deliberate letters. The kind of handwriting that belonged to a child who was still learning cursive, who formed each letter with concentration and pride. Sophia's handwriting. I set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter and sat down at the table before opening it. My hands were shaking slightly. I knew whatever was inside would hurt because Tyler wouldn't send something unless he thought it would crack my resolve. Inside was a birthday card, the cheap kind you buy at the grocery store with generic flowers on the front. But what made my chest tighten was what Sophia had drawn inside. A crayon picture of 3 people standing in front of a house. Me, recognizable by my gray hair drawn in silver crayon. 2 smaller figures labeled Sophia and Olivia in careful letters. The house behind us had a bright red door and flowers in the yard. Michael's roses probably, though they were drawn as simple circles in various colors. Hearts floated in the sky around us. A yellow sun with rays like a child's drawing, simple and pure. At the bottom, in purple crayon with some letters backwards, I miss you, Grandma. Love, Sophia and Olivia. I sat at that kitchen table and cried for 2 solid hours. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep in your chest, that shakes your shoulders and leaves your throat raw. The kind of crying that empties you out and leaves you hollow and exhausted. I looked at that drawing and saw all the birthdays I'd miss. All the school plays and soccer games and first days of school. All the moments when Sophia and Olivia would look for me in the audience and I wouldn't be there. But I didn't call Tyler. Because beneath the grief, beneath the aching loss, I recognized exactly what this was. Emotional leverage. Tyler had stood over Sophia while she drew this, probably helping her spell the words, coaching her on what to say. He'd put it in an envelope with no return address so it would seem spontaneous and innocent, like the girls had done this all on their own out of pure love for their grandmother. The manipulation never ends. It just gets more sophisticated. It uses sweeter weapons. I put the card in the folder with Tyler's 11 letters, filed it under evidence, and forced myself to finish putting away groceries. The next day was Wednesday, my regular lunch day with Catherine. We met at the Panera where we'd first strategized my defense 8 months ago, a place that had become familiar and comfortable. I brought the card with me. Catherine read it slowly, her reading glasses perched on her nose, her expression carefully neutral. When she finished, she set it down on the table between us and was quiet for a long moment. "That's one of the cruelest things they could do," she said finally. "Using those girls as emotional hostages." "I know." My voice came out rough. "I know what it is. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less." Catherine reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Linda, let me remind you of something we discussed at the very beginning. When Sophia and Olivia turn 18, they'll be legal adults. They can contact you directly. Tyler won't be able to stop them. That's 11 years away. The math felt crushing. They're 7 now. By the time they're 18, they won't even remember me. Maybe. Maybe not. Catherine leaned back in her chair. But when that time comes, you can have coffee with them. You can show them everything. The security footage, the court documents, the bank fraud attempts, Tyler's letters. You can explain what happened from your perspective, not filtered through whatever story Tyler's been telling them. They'll understand or they won't. But at least they'll hear the truth. And if they don't believe me, then they'll still have $200,000 each waiting for them in education trusts that Tyler can't touch. A gift from a grandmother they may not remember, but who loved them enough to protect their futures even when it meant protecting herself from their parents. I looked at the card lying on the table between us. Sophia's careful lettering. The crayon hearts. The house with the red door. 8 more years, I said. The twins would be 15 when I turned 70. 18 when I was 73. I'll be almost 70 by the time I can see them again. You'll be 69, Catherine corrected gently. Still healthy, still sharp, still living in your home on your own terms. And those girls will be old enough to hear complicated truths without Tyler manipulating how they interpret them. He was right. I knew she was right. But the grief didn't care about logic or strategy or long-term planning. The grief just wanted to hold my granddaughters again. I'm keeping the card, I said. Not to torture myself, but because someday when Sophia's 18 and sitting across from me at a coffee shop asking why I disappeared, I want to show her this. I want her to see that her father used her love as a weapon. Catherine nodded slowly. That's fair. That's evidence. Just don't let it become something you stare at every day. I didn't. I filed it away and tried to focus on the life I was building in the space Tyler and Megan had tried to steal. I'm 61 years old. I might have 30 more years ahead of me. I might have 3. None of us knows our expiration date. Michael certainly didn't when he went out to mow the lawn that June morning 4 years ago. But however many years I have left, I'm living them deliberately. Intentionally. On my own terms. My financial advisor called last week with the quarterly investment report. Everything's performing well. Between Michael's life insurance, my retirement accounts, and the house appreciation, I'm more than comfortable for whatever life I have remaining. I'll never need to worry about money or depend on anyone for support. The house continues appreciating. The neighborhood gets more valuable every year as more tech money floods into the research triangle. My 4-bedroom colonial that we bought for $185,000 in 1995 is now worth over $2 million according to the latest county assessment. Tyler and Megan tried to steal that. Tried to manipulate me out of it through fake concern and family pressure and eventually violence. They failed. Last month I spent 2 weeks in Savannah, walking the historic squares alone, eating at restaurants Michael and I had always planned to visit but never made time for. I stayed in a bed and breakfast with a view of the river. I took a ghost tour. I bought watercolors from a local artist and painted the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist from a bench in Lafayette Square. Next month Janet and I are driving the Blue Ridge Parkway, taking our time, staying at small inns, acting like the carefree widows we never imagined we'd become. We're both learning what it means to build a life after loss, to find joy in unexpected places, to recognize that endings can also be beginnings if you're brave enough to look for them. Every Sunday morning I paint in what used to be Michael's office and is now my art studio. The room doesn't feel haunted anymore. It feels like possibility. My paintings are getting better. Still not good, probably never will be good, but better. More confident. More willing to take risks with color and composition. The rose garden Michael planted the year Tyler was born still blooms every June. I tend it like always, pruning and watering and talking to flowers like my husband can somehow hear me through the roots in the soil. But now I cut bouquets for Janet and the other women from my support group instead of letting the roses wither on the stems. Michael would like that, I think. He always hated waste. I catch my reflection sometimes in mirrors or windows when the light hits a certain way and I see the scar on my left temple. It healed into a thin silver line, barely visible unless you're looking for it, but always there. That scar is a reminder. It reminds me of blood and wine and Thanksgiving dinner destroyed. It reminds me of my son calling me ridiculous while his daughters cried in fear. It reminds me of the moment I chose myself over a family that had already chosen to betray me. And I don't regret it. Not even a little. That scar means I survived. It means I recognized manipulation and refused to be a victim. It means I protected myself when my own family wouldn't. If you're reading this, if you're dealing with adult children who think they're entitled to your home, your money, your autonomy, please listen to what I learned the hard way. Get a lawyer. A good one who specializes in elder law and estate protection. Don't wait until something happens. Do it now while you're still thinking clearly and can make decisions without pressure. Document everything. Keep records of weird questions about your finances. Note when someone shows unusual interest in your living situation. Save emails and texts. Install security cameras if you need to. Don't ignore the warning signs. That son who suddenly wants to help manage your bank accounts. That daughter-in-law who keeps suggesting you need supervision. That pressure to sign documents just to make things easier. These aren't expressions of love. They're reconnaissance for something bigger. And most importantly, this is the hardest part. Don't feel guilty for protecting yourself. Even from your own blood. Especially from your own blood. Because at the end of the day, you don't owe anyone your peace, your security, or your home. Family doesn't get to manipulate you just because you share DNA. Love doesn't mean letting people destroy you. I wake up every morning in my own bed, in my own house, living my own life. The doors are locked. The cameras are still recording. The will is ironclad with penalties for anyone who tries to contest it. My accounts are protected with authentication protocols Tyler can never breach again. And I sleep fine at night. Better than fine, actually. I sleep with the peace that comes from knowing I chose myself. From knowing that when the people who were supposed to protect me instead tried to destroy me, I had the strength to walk away. The house is quiet now. Just me and Michael's memory and the roses that bloom every summer. My Tuesday lunches with Catherine. My Thursday support group. My Sunday morning painting sessions. Janet's terrible jokes that make me laugh until my sides hurt. It's a smaller life than I imagined at 61. Smaller than the one I dreamed of when Tyler was born, when I pictured holidays with grandchildren and family dinners that felt safe instead of dangerous. But it's mine. Completely, entirely, protectively mine. And some days that's enough. Some days that's everything. The scar on my temple catches light when I turn my head. A permanent reminder of the Thanksgiving that changed everything. The day blood mixed with wine and my son showed me exactly who he'd become. I touch it sometimes, this thin silver line, and think I survived. I chose myself. And I'd do it again. Every single time I'd do it again. If this story of standing up for yourself had you gripped from start to finish, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Linda smiled with blood running down her face, knowing the cameras had captured everything. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful revenge stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.